I've spent most of my adult life in Britain, so whenever I do go back to the US, it feels completely foreign. It completely knocks me sideways. Here's 8 ways that the reverse culture shock really stands out to me. The first one is the scale of things. Everything feels bigger. Well, it is bigger. And it's the same thing that Brits say when they first go to the US. They just can't get over how big everything is. Cars are wider and longer, making the roads wider and longer. Just getting from point A to point B is definitely an endeavor. Our shopping malls are bigger, and there's these strip malls everywhere, which are pretty... Sorry. Thought I'd be outside today because it's probably the last nice day of the year. I'll never forget the time I went to pick up my rental car when I landed, and they'd run out of cars. So she acted like she was doing me this huge favor, and she said, "We have pickup trucks. I could offer you this," and it was huge. Like, you could fit a family of 5 in there. It wasn't my first time driving a pickup truck, but the first time in probably since I was 17. So it felt very strange. I literally had no choice. So I did take this pickup truck, and it was fun, I suppose, in one way, just to sit up above the traffic. You could kind of see what's going on. At the same time, it was a little bit terrifying because some of the roads I was driving on had some pretty sheer drops because we were in the mountains. The second one is the fake friendliness, and it ties in nicely with the tipping culture. I know for the most part that service workers are being extra polite and friendly because that's what your tip is paying for. And personally, I prefer the British style where it's kind of like you can tell if someone's in a bad mood. They're not going to go out of their way to be nice to you. It feels more real. And just having to be friendly all the time. I worry for people's mental health over there if they're constantly putting on a mask or a facade to be extra friendly. And speaking of the tipping culture, it's definitely getting out of control over there. It seems like for every little thing, there's a tip jar. Or if you're paying by card, there will be a screen that pops up and it prompts you to pay a tip. And it usually starts at 20%, goes either side. But I know it's because they're not being paid a proper wage. That's a whole other issue. Yeah, I definitely prefer the UK for the calmness, the honesty, nobody's working really hard for your tip. A lot of Americans will say, oh, they don't like that there isn't such a service culture abroad. Well, you know what? It's not everything. What prompted this video is I have a trip to the US now. Someone's getting married, so I'm going over in early 2026. I'm already thinking about what is that going to cost. It definitely feels like things have gotten a lot more expensive. I'm going to put my hat on. I didn't want to put sunglasses on. The US 15 years ago, thereabouts, 15, 20 years ago, it was definitely a lot cheaper. I knew Brits that were traveling over to New York to go shopping, and, they were getting great deals, and it felt like the normal thing for them to do. And now it's completely different. It's shockingly expensive. The last time I was in New York, a simple breakfast, it was in a nice place, but it wasn't anything over the top special. And it was probably about $30, including the tip, which is just a lot of money. I feel like when I was growing up, $30 would, pay for a family of 4 to go out. So I mentioned the tipping. Obviously, if you're going out to eat, the tipping's about 25%. So it just makes it incredibly expensive. So I'm almost anticipating that instead of going out to dinner a lot, there will be hotel picnics. If you have any things that you'd like me to look out for when I go do my US trip in 2026, let me know in the comments and I'll make sure I do a video for that. The fourth one is the healthcare anxiety. For trips back to the US, I have to ensure my travel insurance covers any medical emergencies there. Otherwise, a short hospital stay could cost a fortune. That's just another expense that just has to be factored in. The fifth one that's very shocking to me now is when I go out to the Western US is how dry the air is. And secondarily, how much AC is run, especially obviously in the summer months. Let's talk about the cold AC first. It's too cold. I'd say most of the time it's too cold, and I have to bring some layer with me everywhere I go. Restaurants are really bad. Cinemas, the movie theaters, those are really cold. Now, the dry air is no joke, especially at elevation. I don't think people are quite prepared when they experience this. It's a really horrible feeling, but basically your nasal passages feel like they're burning, and it's from the dry air. And so occasionally Occasionally you get nosebleeds. It's almost like a headache because of the air so dry in the sinus cavities. And I mentioned elevation. So heaven forbid you have any sort of hangover. It's absolutely the worst. Speaking of elevation, I actually got altitude sickness. I basically found it hard to stand upright. I found it hard to move. It was hard to breathe. And it put me in a really foul mood. So yeah, don't recommend that. I'd love to know in the comments what you found to have the most culture shock when you were in the US, or what you think would be the most surprising thing if you haven't been there yet. The next one is the social enthusiasm that people have, and it comes across as loudness, the volume and the screaming, and it's just treated like it's completely normal. I don't get on with that at all. Another part of the enthusiasm with socializing is there's just this kind of expected level of friendliness and small talk, which I don't mind, but sometimes it can get a bit much. It's hard to get away from. Questions get personal. I don't know how to answer certain things. I don't know what to say about that. I don't know. It feels like it's less of an issue here in the UK, which is nice. Most of my friends are Brits now. I have a couple friends from the States who live here, and they've been here as long as I have. But yeah, I feel like in the UK, it's taken me longer to form friends with Brits, but it feels like those bonds are stronger now, as opposed to people that I was friends with in the States. And once you move away, you just lose contact. The next one is the food additives and the processes. I've spoken about this before, so I don't want to go into too much length talking about it, but I'm kind of dreading going into the supermarket and seeing like aisles and aisles of packaged food and seeing artificial flavors and colors on things. Like, I'm happy that they actually declare it usually on the front of the package, or at least on the back, but it's not ideal that it has to exist in the first place. So that means I'm going to definitely be hitting up Trader Joe's. If I was to make a video, when I make a video about the things I do miss about the US, Trader Joe's is hands down going to be on it. The last one is the advertising overload. And by that, I mean, there's billboards freaking everywhere. It's so weird. It's kind of cute out in the countryside. It'll be like, some kind of tourist attraction, or, maybe a restaurant, something like that. That's fine. But in the cities, it'll be things like a particular hospital or a law firm. I mean, it also feels like anywhere you go, if there's an opportunity for advertising, if you get in the back of a yellow cab in New York City, there's advertising. In lifts and elevators, there's advertising. Yeah, it just feels like a lot. It's definitely calmer in the UK. What's up, little buddy? Come say hi. There's a cat. There's always some distraction. People occasionally ask me if I would move back, and I can't say I never would. It's not on the list of things to do, but if the right opportunity came along, maybe I would. But I'm very settled here. I feel more British than I do American. I hope that doesn't offend any Brits, but it's true. I have built up more years of state pension here than I have in the States. And yeah, going to the US, it feels really joyful at times. There's a lot to be said. I know the news headlines are pretty horrific a lot of the times, but day to day, people are living their lives and getting along just fine. So going back to the US does feel really good sometimes, and I have a lot of family there. But it's also jarring, and Britain is just an overall calmer situation. Again, not all the headlines will reflect that, but overall, people are just getting on with it. And yeah, I feel like my nervous system is more suited for being here. Going back to the US, there's a nostalgia factor, but it also feels familiar in a way that people who haven't been there would look at something like New York City and it feels familiar. It looks familiar, but only because you've seen it on television and movies. And I have that feeling now myself a bit. I feel like I need to make a video about the whole retirement issues and just the sort of financial taxation. It's a tangly mess. It might be interesting to dig into that one. When one of my other videos are out about the financial trap of the American abroad, or the things I miss, I will link that at the end. But in the meantime, if you like the US versus UK comparisons, have a look at my video next, which is comparing my experiences in the US versus Britain healthcare systems, also NHS versus private.